Hello guys, we're finally done with chapter 6 and we are on to chapter 7. Chapter 7 is budgeting, and this is also going to be a long topic area for us. So we will start at the beginning of this chapter with topic 7.1. Topic 7.1 introduces us to the concept of budgets and how they are useful for managers. Before we get there, let's back up. When all businesses start and they're looking for funding, one of their first steps is to create a business plan, right? A business plan that's usually involves having a SWOT analysis. If you guys have taken a business class before, you know what that is. It's something that lists all of a company's strengths, weaknesses. Make sure you guys can still see that. Weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, right? And so you might be wondering, well, why are we talking about SWOT analysis when the topic has to do with budgeting? Well, it's how a budget is useful to management, right? And a budget can assist with all of these areas, right? Especially when it comes to opportunities, right? What's something that we see as an area that we could potentially move into? What's the cost of that? What's the anticipated revenues? So it can help managers project whether or not that's really a profitable area for them to seek, right? Strengths, that's what the company is already doing very well. Maybe it's its competitive advantage that it has. A weakness, those are areas that the company may be underperforming in or perhaps overly reliant on. So I bet you anything this virus that we're going through right now, Apple realized they had a huge weakness. They had most of their suppliers located in one country. So when that country had an issue, then it affected them. It affected their main business line. So that's a weakness that they have, is over-reliance on a main supplier or suppliers and the fact they were all geographically located in the same place, right? So managers take a step back periodically and review all the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats facing their company. And especially it's something you do when you develop the business plan. And again, opportunities are new areas for growth. Threats, those are usually external threats, competitors, things like that. So again, a budget could assist here in helping us understand what our costs are, what our margins are, right? Contribution margin, gross margin, how much is our margin of safety if our competitor is offering a price below ours? Are we able to match that? So budget can help managers day-to-day, strategic planning, or starting up the business from scratch. So we should probably take the time to define what a budget is. I will give you the lengthy and excellent definition that your book has for a budget. So it says a budget is a quantitative plan, estimating when and how much cash, or other resources, will be received. I know it's lengthy, but it's a good one. So it's going to tell us in monetary terms how much the company is planning to receive in cash or other resources, right? Accounts receivable, capital assets, things like that. When are we going to receive them? And the second part of that is, and when and how much cash or other resources will be used. Okay, so that's our definition for a budget. It's a monetary or quantitative plan that's going to predict when and how much cash or other resources the company will be receiving, and when and how much cash or other resources will be used, right? So maybe we see an area for growth, but it means that we have to invest money. We have to use up cash in order to gain new equipment to meet new demands, right? So it's a plan to help management with their responsibilities. If you remember when we started this semester, we said that management's responsibilities fell into one of three categories. Do you guys remember? Samson, do you remember? Gabriel, do you remember? Let's see. It was planning, controlling, and evaluating. You guys kind of remember that? It was so long ago. It was literally the first chapter. And we said that managerial accounting can help with each one of these management responsibilities, right? A budget definitely comes into play with planning, helping managers set a goal, right? If they see that opportunity, what's their 1-year goal, 5-year goal to move into that area? What is the cost? So it's really going to help with management's planning responsibility. And also we're going to see later in this chapter how it's also going to help with management's evaluating responsibility, right? What's the purpose of having a budget? It's our game plan, but then we want to compare and see how we matched up against our plan. So that's evaluating, part of the evaluating process. Okay. All right, continuing on. So we talked about what a budget is, how it can help management, and specifically address those management responsibilities we talked about at the beginning of the semester. So now we know that, let's address how to develop a budget. So budget development. A lot of your large companies will have an entire department associated and devoted to just developing the budget, monitoring the budget, evaluating the budget, right? For your large companies, that's what they'll have. So when do we develop it? It's usually developed or developed a few months before the start of the new year. Prior to new period or year. Okay, and again, it can be developed by a department, created by budgeting department, if the company has one. And then your book talks about a couple different ways that we can develop the budget. We can use a top-down approach, which basically means that your top management, the CEO, he dictates what the goal is, how we're going to get there, and what resources your department gets. So here's like the employees, here's all the other managers. So that's a top-down approach. So that's one way that the budgeting department can create that budget. Basically, the CEO tells them how to create it. Or the other method for developing a budget is what's called a bottom-up approach, also commonly called participative budgeting. Basically, it's the opposite, where we tell our employees, here's our goal, what do you need to meet this goal? And then the employees set the participatives for launching what is needed, what their costs are, what their resources required are, right? So those are the two different approaches. It's preferred to do a bottom-up approach, right? The advantages of a bottom-up approach is that you're going to have what's called buy-in or participation. So there's greater buy-in from all employees and departments. Buy-in basically means they're more committed to the outcome and they're more likely to work towards that outcome, right? So if they're consulted in the process and if they're asked what they need as opposed to being told, here's what you need, they're more likely to work towards that in a collaborative manner. So that's an advantage of it. Another advantage is you may get more accurate figures, right? It's going to be more accurate if the information, the cost information is coming from the managers who are responsible for making the products because they're familiar with how much they need, their supplier costs, at any changes that are happening with their suppliers if costs are going to go up, for example. So they have a more accurate pulse on the cost data that they're encountering. So you're going to likely get more accurate figures as well. What are some disadvantages of using a bottom-up approach to budgeting? It takes a longer time because now you have to go consult with all the different departments and find out what they need, right? So a disadvantage, put a little minus sign there. Disadvantages is it takes a longer time to prepare. Also, the goals may not be aligned. Goals not aligned. Right? Because the goal of the top CEO might be different from the goal of each department. Right? Maybe they want to hire more employees or make sure their employees are working full shifts. And so maybe that's their more short-term goal, and the CEO might have a different, broader goal. Right? So those are the advantages and disadvantages. Most companies try at least in some form to do a participative budgeting because they do see that the advantages usually outweigh the disadvantages. All right, so we talked about the 2 common ways to develop it. It's usually developed a few months prior to the new year. So if we have a year that starts in January, your budget development might start in August or September of the year before that, to give us time to get ready for that January through December of the next year. What else did I want to mention? So that brings up the point that most budgets will cover a 12-month period. Sure, budgets could cover a longer period, 18 months, 2 years, 5 years. Sure, but most of the time, the most common timeline is 12 months. What else should we mention in this overview? Do read through it, but this, I'm just highlighting the main points for you. Another advantage of just overall budgeting, if I go back here, an overall advantage of just budgeting in general, not looking at the 2 different methods, but just in general, the advantages are that you're developing a plan, right? Develop plan. It helps management have a focus on the future, right? Plan for the future, any costs that might be coming around. It's also going to help prevent unexpected costs, right? So if we can focus on the future and we're looking and we see, oh, in the future, we're going to experience a downturn in our demand, or our supplier is going to have a tough time getting us what we need. So if we can look that far into the future and see those potential bottlenecks, then we can prevent unexpected costs, bottlenecks, problems, basically, right? So that's a big advantage. And most books or managers will cite as the main advantage the fact that it promotes communication and goal alignment between the departments. So this budget allows us to state what our monetary plan is, what is our goal. And then once we have that, everyone knows it because we've published it and we all try to work together to achieve that goal. All right. What else did I want to mention? I think that's it. We'll talk more about the master budget and the components of the budget in the next lesson. Okay, so for now, just a general overview. So go ahead and read those first 10 pages of chapter 7 that kind of talks about this a little bit more, and complete the participation assignment that you have for budgeting. All right, see you in the next one.